257, Tarcisius, he was a little 12-year-old boy. He was a 12-year-old Christian, and there was a terrible persecution going on in the city of Rome. The Christians, by cover of night, every early Sunday morning would gather in the catacombs. And one Sunday, Tarcisius, just like every other Sunday, went to Mass. And the bishop, the priest, he told everyone before Mass that some of their brothers had been found out, but they didn't renounce the Lord. They were in prison, and the next day they would die. The priest asked for the wisdom and the strength because these men, they had requested Holy Communion before they suffered martyrdom. Mass goes on, the sacrifice is offered, just as it is still to this day. And the priest turns around to give his final blessing, and he sees little Tarcisius at his feet. He gives the blessing, picks Tarcisius up, and asks, "Tarcisius, what are you doing?" And he said, "Father, send me." "Don't you know how dangerous it is, Tarcisius?" "I do, but my youth will be my disguise." "Do you know what treasure you're holding, Tarcisius?" "I do. I'm holding my Lord and my God, and I would rather die than let this Holy Eucharist be profaned." The priest gives him some sacred linen from Holy Mass. Tarcisius did not want to even touch the Eucharist, wraps it close to his heart. The community prays over him and sends him on his way. Tarcisius takes the back roads through Rome. The sun is beginning to rise on that Sunday morning in 257. He sees some of the kids he would play with a far way off. Not wanting to stop and talk, he takes a side route, but he caught his friend's eyes. They cut him off in an alleyway. "Tarcisius, what are you doing? What are you holding over your heart?" they ask. "I can't talk right now. I'm on a mission. I have to go." "Tarcisius, just tell us what you're holding and we'll let you go." I'm not allowed to say. "Please just let me through. I gotta go." He's getting nowhere, but some other boys from the town see a commotion and they go to the other side of the alley, and now Tarcisius, he's trapped. Tarcisius sees that they won't move until he shows them what he has. He refuses, and he lets up a prayer, "Jesus, save me." And when those boys heard that name, they knew who Tarcisius was. He was a Christian. And those boys knew what their parents did to Christians. They killed them. So those boys, thinking that they're tough, pick up little stones and start to throw Tarcisius. "Just show us what you have. You have that sacred bread, don't you? Just show us." And he refused. He covers up the Eucharist even stronger, tighter, closer to his chest. Two little boys pick up a really large stone and hurl it at him. He's looking the other way. It hits his head, and he's bleeding out. At that moment, a Roman soldier on his patrol walks by. His name was Quadratus. Quadratus sees the commotion, sees the blood, goes to the boy, and he knows who it is. Quadratus himself is a secret Christian. He picks up Tarcisius, who's dying, in his arms. He's running back to see if he can get to the priest in time, but there's no hope. With Tarcisius' last words, he smiles. And he says, "They didn't take Jesus from me. They didn't take Jesus from me." What is the Eucharist, and why would Tarcisius die to protect it? Who did Tarcisius find there hidden as he is before us here? Tarcisius, he knew that the Eucharist was God. The God who 257 years earlier took on the disguise of a human, hidden as an embryo in the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary. That same God who hid himself in that lowly town of Nazareth. That same God who in his manifestation to Israel preached the kingdom. But that humble God even let his words be disbelieved. The God of the universe, truth himself, spoke, and he let people disbelieve him. Maybe the worst time in his whole ministry, it's recorded in John chapter 6. Jesus had just done the miracle of the loaves. He multiplied bread. That night, he walked on water, performed a miracle with his own body. And then, in a little synagogue in Capernaum, he tells us that he not only wanted to be with us for 33 short years, he wanted to be with us until the end of time. I'm going to give you the bread of life. I'm going to give you my flesh. Disciples that day, John 66, verse 6, they walked away from him. This is a hard teaching. This is a disguise which the world cannot recognize, but only those to whom the Father gives the grace of faith. Tarcisius knew that 224 years before him, that same God gave us bread changed into his body, wine changed into his blood. Tarcisius knew that 20 years after that, 200 years before him, St. Paul spoke of that same mystery. Whoever eats this bread partakes of the death of the Lord, partakes in the body of the risen one, until he comes again. For 2 centuries, Christians had worshipped the same way that we do today. We read the readings, bread is taken, wine is offered, and those same words of Jesus are spoken, just as they were to Tarcisius, just as they were by St. Paul, just as they were by Jesus himself. This is my body. Today, we don't face a persecution like Tarcisius did. There's not an Emperor Valerian who wants to kill us. Check it out, people. Here we are adoring the Lord in public square. But that doesn't mean that people won't want to take us from Jesus. We know that Jesus, by grace, lives in our hearts. If we disbelieve what he says in favor of our own personal opinions, if we choose to live a life of self-seeking pleasure over a life of self-giving service, we cut off the life of God within us. But many Catholics, many Christians have walked away from the Lord present on our altars. Each and every week, that same Eucharist is celebrated. This is my body. Here I am. And if it weren't enough that Jesus asked us to keep holy the Sabbath, please come to Mass every Sunday. If that weren't enough, he says, I'm going to show up. Why are we not crawling to Mass? We have all the excuses. Life gets busy. It's my one day to sleep in. My kids are playing 3,000 sports. We have many ways to justify it. Well, I go most Sundays. I at least go during the holidays, or